Dear learners, I am Christina Georgy, your academic counselor for the MEG program. I welcome you to my session. For those who are attending this online, let me remind you that this session is specifically designed for the course code MEG-01, which is titled British Poetry. Hence, the aspects discussed here will be solely based on the official study material for the same. And as per the requests of many of our learners, this session will be recorded by me so that this will aid you in your effective preparation of the upcoming TEE. So in our last session, we discussed the two poems by John Milton, which are they? The Nativity Ode, which is titled On the Morning of Christ's Nativity, and the Pastoral Elegy by John Milton, which is that Lycidas. Remember, we are discussing block 4 of MEG-01 and we already saw units 17 to 19. Thereafter, we discussed unit 20 and now we are proceeding to unit 21, which is titled L'Allegro, Il Penseroso and the Sonnets. First and foremost, let me ask you, have you heard of these two poems, L'Allegro and Il Penseroso? You can be frank. I know you have heard because that is part of your BA syllabus. But there are chances for you to have forgotten that. One main reason could be the pronunciation. Do you agree? For those who have already heard of this, are very aware of the pronunciation? If yes, good. But very often we find students who are not much aware of the correct pronunciation and the spelling. Spelling is yet another, fun aspect. People write all sorts of spellings. So just listen to my pronunciation. It's L'Allegro and Il Penseroso. L'Allegro and Il Penseroso. L'Allegro and Il Penseroso. Okay. Very often for vocabulary practice and language teaching, we do drilling. What do you mean by drilling? Doesn't mean you go and drill the floor or something. It is an exercise that we do in ELT, English language teaching. But drilling is simply repetition. Okay. Usually you might feel like, oh, this is something done to kids, but not exactly. For every vocabulary teaching, it is okay to do a vocabulary drill. That is, if I say L'Allegro and Il Penseroso, for those who are not clear about the pronunciation, can repeat after me. That is why I gave you drilling on L'Allegro and Il Penseroso. It is important to have an idea regarding the correct pronunciation so that you will write the spelling correctly. Okay? Is that clear? Yes, good. Thank you for the response. So, if you look at page number 36 of your study material, the very introductory session mentions it is impossible to fully understand and appreciate Milton's L'Allegro without also reading its companion piece, Il Penseroso. Why is it so? The answer is actually given in the sentence itself. That is, these two are companion poems. Which are the companion poems by John Milton? L'Allegro and Il Penseroso. So let me ask you, what do you mean by companion poems? I know you have studied companion poems before. You just have to recollect it. Companion poems. What do you mean by the term companion? Yes, go for the literal meaning. Okay, I'll give you an idea. Companion poems are pieces of poetry that were written to accompany one another. That is, they often appear as pairs. Do you understand? Companion poems should be read as pairs, or readers should at least understand how they relate to one another. I'll give you a hint of a popular companion poem, that is by Blake. Yes, two poems are there. Yes, by Blake. You must have studied Blake already. So even in schools, they teach these two poems. William Blake companion poems. Song of Innocence, Song of Experience. Have you heard of these things? It seems like you have forgotten everything. It's okay. Just make sure that you revise all these. Okay. So, William Blake's companion poems include The Lamb and the Tiger. The Lamb and the Tiger. Remember now studying the lamb and the tiger? At least you must have heard the mention about the lamb and the tiger, right? William Blake. Similarly, earlier we discussed Ode on a Grecian Urn. It also has a companion poem titled Ode on a Grecian Urn. Okay, so just have an understanding that L'Allegro and Il Penseroso are also companion poems, and they complement each other, they accompany one another. And this is why, to fully understand and appreciate one of them, you need to be aware of the other one also. So these poems are first published in the year 1645, and we can say these two poems are deliberately posed as dialectical opposites with a strong complementarity of structure and images. That is, Milton has deliberately posed these two poems as opposites with a strong complementarity of structure and images. They are similar in structure and image, but the idea, as you can see in the very title, is opposite. Like the very term L'Allegro means the happy man in Italian, and the term Il Penseroso means the melancholy man. If you look at both these poems, each poem is spoken in the voice of its representative. What do you mean by the voice of its representative? That is the character. For example, if it is L'Allegro, who would be the character? The happy man or the melancholy man? Let me see whether you have comprehended things. Yes, correct. Very good. So, what about Il Penseroso? What about the next one? Il Penseroso. Yeah, glad to see all those responses. Yes, correct. So this is what happens when you actively listen. For those who have your study material, you are actually listening to me and looking at the points that I am mentioning, right? So there is effective learning that is taking place, reading and listening. Both your reading skills and listening skills are activated, and hence there will be better retention of these points, hopefully. But revision is also mandatory. Okay, so I'll give you a better clarity on this. That is, the speaker in L'Allegro argues for living a life full of pleasure, while the speaker in Il Penseroso argues for a life dedicated to study. That is, the context is similar, but then there are differences. Alright, so both L'Allegro and Il Penseroso begin with the speaker invoking a goddess as their guide, and in this sense the poems draw from the classical hymns that Greek and Roman poets wrote. Why did they write this? In praise of a chosen god or goddess. Yes, so keep that in mind. And if we look at this L'Allegro with special focus, we can say that it is a lyric poem, and it is also a pastoral poem. That is, it deals with rural life. Just let me know a pastoral poem other than this written by Milton. Let me see if you would answer. Another pastoral poem. Wow, correct. Okay, Do you know why? Thank you for responding. Do you know why I asked you this question? See, the reason is this is how you connect answers. This is how you connect and write. So this is possible only if you understand the concepts and study. So L'Allegro highlights the happy emotions of a spring day. Why is that so? It is because it is spoken by the happy man, right? Yes. About the structure, remember it is written in iambic pentameter, and the rhyme scheme would be rhyming couplet. Like there are words such as mirth, birth, bright, slight. Rhyming words are made use of in L'Allegro. I think we should explain this in detail because these two, the companion poems, are often asked for TEE. This would probably be an expected question from Milton. Okay, so you can expect essay question from this unit, especially with respect to L'Allegro and Il Penseroso. There you will be asked to write the similarities and distinctions of these two companion poems. So it would be great and it would be helpful for you if you could make note of these two. Mark these two as important, because if you are lucky, you will see this question in the question paper. Okay, and I would say it's a scoring one also, because it's comparatively easy to study. Just have to read the poem, understand it, read the study material, keep note of the important points, the structure, the form, what happens here, and then you need to compare and contrast. It's very easy to compare and contrast the companion poems. You don't have to do anything on your own. Actually, it's everything given here clearly. If you could add some points, that would also be interesting, relevant points. Okay, yes. So the poem opens with an address to melancholy. Following this, the poem changes rhythm. That is, the first 10 lines are of alternating length. That is, it switches from iambic pentameter to trimeter. Then the poem essentially outlines the events of one day spent for the most part in the countryside. That is why it is a pastoral poem. The setting is countryside, where the pleasures of the country and the beauty of the rural landscape are explored. So the element of sensuality in his descriptions of the rural scenes are also notable. The sensuality is enhanced by the trope of the union or coupling that haunts the poem. There is this trope. Have a look at this on page number 37 of your study material. Remember to check out the appendix provided towards the end of this particular block. There you have the whole text of L'Allegro and Il Penseroso. Speaking about the emphasis of sensuality, the emphasis and the sexual union is never elaborated. That is one thing that is seen in these poems. That is, these aspects are not elaborated beyond an extent. Okay, never into a full-fledged theme. Sensuality and sexuality were and are conveniently an integral part of celebrations of myth, part of the discourse of the comic and lyric that Milton inherits from the classical. So this is an influence, or it is inherited from the classical style. One of the most striking images in the poem is that of the companions of mirth. Okay, so lines 25 to 35, you can have a look at that. Okay, if they ask you these lines also, you must be able to identify that these are from L'Allegro. The comic tone of the poem is also mentioned. That too is not allowed to grow into a full theme. Along with the sensuality, it serves to dignify myth. Sensuality, sexuality, then what else is there? The comic aspect, all these serves to dignify the myth. After the rural scenes, with the close of the day, remember the daytime it is the pastoral setting, and towards the close of the day the poem shifts to the city. Oh, what a change, from rural to the urban. Okay, and dwells on the pleasures and joys of night in the city. more of a nightlife is shown to an extent, focusing on the court, its masks and musics and the pleasures of the spectacular. Remember, Milton used to write masks also. These are types of plays that he used to write, and one famous mask is Comus. Okay, it's not mentioned in your study material, just an additional piece of information. The countryside in this sense figures as a mass of sensuality that is given definition and substance in the more cultured practices of the artist in the city. Okay, that's just the concluding line. Now, if we focus on Il Penseroso, it also depicts a similar day spent in contemplation and thought. Like its companion poem, this particular poem follows the same metrical pattern, switches to the more consistent tetrameter couplet in subsequent invocation of melancholy. Those lines 11 to 16 are mentioned here. It should be noticed that here he rejects the sensuality of the earlier poem, at least thematically, and melancholy is perceived to be beyond the human senses, and therefore it is associated with the color, which is the color black, melancholy black. And again, we can see it is a contrast to the emphasis on coupling and union in the earlier poem. This poem dwells on the pleasures of solitude and renunciation of the world. Earlier it was union, here it is renunciation and solitude. That is, earlier it was togetherness, and here it is solitude. Solitude is what is celebrated. One important aspect to remember is that the dawn of day signals the time to retire and sleep. This inversion of routines is also an inversion of the temporal sequence of the companion poem. What do you mean by that? Temporal sequence, the sequence of time. This suggests that L'Allegro is a poem that addresses the everyday circumstances of life, while Il Penseroso works on the principle of distance from these. So this is how the writer has concluded page number 38, that is the section on Il Penseroso. So that is important, because when you compare and contrast, such points could be made use of to enhance your answer. So when you study for that question, you will have to study, because that is an expected question. I would say it is 90% a sure question. Just see if they have asked this question for your assignment. Okay. These days we could observe that questions are getting repeated from assignments also. Okay. So never ignore the assignment. Make sure that you read the questions in the assignment. Section 21.4 would give you a comparative discussion of these two poems. There you have a lot of poems, that is, the pair of poems represent a series of tensions and opposites. Which are the opposites that we saw? Day and night, mirth and melancholy. Mirth is something that shows happiness, whereas melancholy is something that denotes sadness. Okay. Milton's old personal struggle between classical and Christian traditions, all such things are there. Remember, Milton chose to write these mirrored poems in English, these companion poems in English, but the titles, remember, the titles are still written in Latin. L'Allegro and Il Penseroso, Latin terms for happy man and melancholy man. So it would be great if you could write all these as an introduction. Even for any kind of question based on L'Allegro and Il Penseroso, all these would serve as an introduction. If you look at the critics' opinion, many critics have speculated that Milton prefers the pensive melancholy celebrated in Il Penseroso. Why is that so? It is because it represents the ascetic life of study as opposed to L'Allegro. L'Allegro, remember, emphasizes a pleasure-seeking lifestyle. That is, I hope you understood. Critics say Milton more or less prefers the second one over the first one, or the second one to the first one. Okay, that is because the second one is what celebrates melancholy, the life of study, where the first one is more like the pleasure-seeking lifestyle that is portrayed. That is one aspect that critics have pointed out. And Milton's invocation of the goddess Melancholy reminds one of his salutation to Mirth in L'Allegro. Okay, here it is Melancholy, there it is L'Allegro, and there it is Mirth, and this sets up the parallel structure of the two poems. The parallel structure of the two poems. Okay, so read about such aspects, it's given in detail. And remember Charles Diodetti that I spoke about during the introductory session on Milton? Remember, I told you this name appears in the textbook here and there. Yes, some critics argue that the two poems refer equally to Milton. Others believe that L'Allegro was about his friend Charles Diodetti, while Il Penseroso was autobiographical in nature. I hope you got the point clearly. That is, some critics believe that both these poems are about Milton itself. Some others believe that the first one is about Charles Diodetti. Which one is about Charles Diodetti according to the critics? And who was Charles Diodetti? Some of you must be wondering, who's Charles Diodetti? It happens, I understand. Yes, correct. Yes, correct answer there. Thank you, Seema ma'am. And Milton's friend, yes, correct. So the first poem, L'Allegro, is connected with Charles Diodetti. And what about the second poem? Critics have opined that it is more or less autobiographical in nature. Yes, correct. So you should write it is autobiographical. Please mention the key term also. Okay, what you're saying is correct, but from the examination point of view, you will have to write autobiographical in nature. Okay, I suppose you all know what autobiography means. It is an account of a person's life written by that person, himself or herself. Okay. So if I write a book titled The Life and Times of Christina Georgy, that would certainly be an autobiography. Suppose Harida or Tansi or Rahul or Nisha, somebody is writing a book on me, would that be an autobiography? Correct. What would that be known as? Correct. That would be a biography. You people should be grateful to me. Within seconds, I made all of you internationally renowned authors. See? Yeah. You never know. You never know the hidden talents in you. Maybe who knows, someday you people might turn authors. These days, you have immense opportunities, right? You have freedom of expression. You have platforms to express your talent, literary talent. Okay. Even self-publishing is available. So all such possibilities are there, all right? Yes. All right, a quick mention on the structural similarities of the companion poems. That is, both the poems open with brief introductory stanzas of 10 lines each. 10 lines each. That means in both the poems there are 10 lines of introduction. Then the main bodies of the poems follow the fixed line and meter. That is same for both. Rhyming couplets in the iambic tetrameter. I told you when I introduced the poem, right? Yes. So remember the opening stanzas are also identical in structure. A quatrain. What do you mean by quatrain? 4 lines followed by a sestet. Okay, they've given you the rhyme scheme also. A, B, B, A followed by E, D, D, E, E, C. Okay, A, B, B, A, C, D, D, E, E, C. Okay. Then there are a lot of points mentioned in your study material. Ideally, you should be reading all the points. I mentioned the important ones, I believe. Yes. There is also a paradox that we see in Il Penseroso. It emerges because the two attitudes are posed as oppositional. That is, when in reality they are not, they are merely extensions within a continuum of human attitudes. So read about this paradox mentioned also. So pages 39 to 40. Very important with respect to the comparison and contradictions of both the companion poems. If you could look at page number 58 of the appendix provided towards the end of this block, you will get the entire text of L'Allegro and Il Penseroso, 58 to 63. Yes. So when I say text, some of you must be wondering why I mentioned the term text. Okay, the word text in literary parlance and research, it doesn't just mean a textbook. A text could be the subject of your study. So it could be any literary form or genre. A poem could be a text. A short story could be a text. A drama could be a text. Can a movie be a text? Yes, because there are researches going on in movies, even cartoons and animes these days. So all these would fall under media studies or cultural studies, etc. So these people are actually focusing their study on one movie or a series of movies for that matter, right? So the text could be that particular movie. The primary source would be that particular movie. So in literary parlance and in the research scenario, you can call a movie also. If you are focusing on a particular movie for your research or study, then that would also be called as a text. Do you understand? A text could be anything which is your subject of study. Clear? Yes. Anyway, you don't have to study that as part of this paper. I explained because I mentioned this poem as if a text. So some of you might be confused. That is why I explained. Okay. So that will do with respect to L'Allegro and Il Penseroso. Yes. Let me repeat it once again. You'll have to study this. Okay. If you skip this one, it would be a loss. Because when you see this in the question paper, you'll feel like, I should have studied this. Remember, it's a 20-mark question. So unless you write effectively in an organized manner, including all the important points, you won't be able to score well. Yes. So, shall we have a look at sonnets 19 and 23?